Welcome to the Warband, a World of Warcraft podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Swaglock, even though I don't play a Warlock. And with me today is our wonderful host, Chicken. Chicken, how are you doing?
Can you believe that this downtime this week is going to be 2 hours? Like, what is this? Like, dude, scheduled maintenance for 2 hours? Like, come on. What am I supposed to do for 2 hours? Like I don't have a life outside of World of Warcraft.
Aren't you working on Tuesdays?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, dude,
Okay.
you're not going to be at your computer. But I think it's probably PTR stuff. I know last week was a pretty long downtime, but that was
for Plunderstorm,
Good
dude.
old
That was
Storm.
Dude, 2 hours.
Dude, that's
Blizzard,
not that bad.
get
Go
your
touch
stuff
grass.
together.
Go touch grass, dude. Go touch grass.
What is up?
Anyways, we don't just have Chicken with us today, or myself here. We also have a friend of ours, someone that Chicken and I have both gamed with a lot, run a lot of keys with, raided with quite a bit, and he hangs out all the time in our Discord, answering questions, helping players out, and coaching players. But a good friend of ours named Xortiq. X, how are you doing today?
I'm good. And you?
Good. Yeah, dude, it's good to have you on the podcast and to bring you in for some conversation. We've been wanting to talk about some raid stuff, and especially mythic raiding conversations, and I think you can bring a lot of wisdom and insight to that Chicken and I don't have as much personal experience. We have some, but not a lot. You've been raiding for quite a while, right?
Yeah, I've been mythic raiding since late Castle Nathria, but it didn't really take off until Sanctum of Domination, where I got my first CE.
Ooh, okay, so CE stands for cutting edge.
Yeah, I also lied. It's Sepulture, the first one, not Sanctum. I lied.
Okay, wow. You try to hype that up as if you had gotten a whole season sooner.
Yeah, my bad. I just made stuff up right now on the spot.
You're good, dude. I remember, fun fact, for people listening, I took a hiatus from WoW from about mid-WoD until Shadowlands. So the start of Shadowlands, I came back. I was kind of late in college, and then coming out of college, I was just broke. I had no money. Last thing I was doing was buying a PC. And so when I finally came back to World of Warcraft, I was nervous to do content. Everything was so different, right? Legion, and I think Legion really changed World of Warcraft a ton in content. And so there I am in this guild. Like, I'm a tank, but I'm tanking like heroics, like heroic dungeons. I think I was doing some mythic dungeons like M0. I'm pretty sure I was definitely not touching Mythic Plus at all. And so the guild was doing like a raid night, just a re-clear, getting some gear, and they're just doing normal. It wasn't anything super difficult. They're just doing normal. And X was the raid leader that night. In hindsight, I don't know how he got picked as raid leader, but he was our raid leader for the night.
Either,
man. and there I am, like, trying to tank Denathrius, and X is like, I don't know, dude, stand in the corner. Stand in the corner. We did get we cleared everything, but I put my tanking down for a little bit after that. I went to healing for a while, and then had to work to build up my tank courage again. But I've been good ever since. But you were my first raid leader after I returned to World of Warcraft, which is kind of funny.
Yup.
Which is a good little piece. But
How did you find that guild? Did you just like happen to? Sorry, I just came up with this question. I was just like, oh, how did he even find that guild?
Dude, well, because finding guilds, I think, is a question a lot of people have. And X, I think in a minute we'll probably talk about finding mythic guilds, because that's something you do a lot of. But for me, I have this really like strategic way that I find guilds, and it's been something I've done. I've probably done this like 4 or 5 times over the history of playing World of Warcraft, both after returning and from before I took a hiatus from the game. And the trick is, you have a friend, right? And your friend goes, hey man, let's play together on the same server. And right, usually I'm playing Horde and my friend's playing Alliance. So I'll switch to Alliance, to their servers. I can game with them. And then they'll be like, oh, I found this awesome guild, let's join it. And I'll join the guild. And within a month, that person's like quitting WoW and going off to play like something else. Whatever the flavor of that month is, right? And so now I'm stuck. Now I'm stuck. Yeah, now I'm stuck on Alliance server with like this random guild. And so that's 100% what happened here. Somebody invited me to the guild. I joined like a friend that I had, and then they stopped playing. They went off to do other stuff, and it was like a dead server. The guild was nice. I like the people. They're very nice. But it was Dark Iron server, and it was just I think it was like one of those clumped servers, right? We have multiple clumped together.
I was on Shattered Hand, so it was.
Yeah. X was on Shattered Hand. That's how we met, and it was just like it was dead, dude. Like I didn't even realize how bad it was until I went to Storm Rage, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so different. I don't know if that matters as much anymore now that servers are so cross realm. Like you can just play cross realm with people, do cross realm stuff. It does make the world feel a little bit more populated though when you see players running around doing things, when the cities feel full. That's really nice. Our auction houses now cross realm, correct?
Some items are, some items aren't.
Some items are, some items aren't. Okay, because
one thing that's interesting is
okay, because one thing that was tough, I think, on that server was. And dude, the guy was in the guild. But we had a guy in our guild that basically owned the economy on our server. Like everything in the auction, everything in the auction house was listed under his name. He was just buying everything up and reselling it. Yeah, dude, the guy was loaded. One time we asked him how much gold he had, and he like had to explain it to us in terms of like how much game time he could buy.
Oh my goodness.
It was like years.
That's crazy.
Like years and years and years of game time. And we're just like, what?
Oh my gosh.
What is going on? I think what was just fun for him, X, you might know more background than I do, but I think what was fun for him was just working the auction house. I think that was like compelling gameplay.
Yeah, I think it's something he does something marketing IRL too, so it's like kind of like double dipping his knowledge.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That makes sense. But yeah, it just so that whole server was like the worst. I remember I transferred one character because I found the guild that we're in now, right? I found Astra. If you want to learn more about that, I believe it's episode 10 of the podcast. We have our guildmaster Spell on, and she talks about that. But I joined our guild, our current guild, with my paladin. I was doing some healing on my paladin, and all of a sudden I transferred to Storm Rage so I can join the guild, and like the auction house was cheaper, like a lot cheaper. There's players everywhere doing stuff. Finding groups for things was easy, and so I haven't looked back. Ironically, the guild we were in has switched over to Storm Rage since then, and so the whole guild transferred over. They're great people. I still enjoy them. We'll occasionally pop in and raid with them once in a while, but happy where I'm at now too, which is awesome. But that was how X and I met. That's how I found that guild, how I got connected.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've told me that story at least like 5 times. Probably. I don't know who the friend was. Sure as heck wasn't me.
Nope, definitely was not you. Sorry. I'm the one who dragged you into WoW. Luckily I haven't left, right? Like imagine me dragging you in and then all of a sudden you're just like gone again.
Nah, dude, you're addicted, bro. You're like, it's like crack for you.
Oh my gosh. I do love this game. Well, we were talking before recording with X and I and how I did a lot of Minecraft content for a while. Yeah. And Minecraft, even though I love Minecraft, I can only play it for like a limited amount of time. And ever since I've stopped creating Minecraft content, like, oh gosh, 3 years ago, right? I just can't play Minecraft anymore. I literally I think about it, I'm like, oh, Minecraft's cool, but I can't bring myself to play it. I burned out so hard. WoW's different, dude. I could play WoW every day. I can talk about WoW every day. I don't get tired of it. I just don't.
Yeah, but you got to realize WoW is almost like a completely different game every 6 months. It's it's not like, and even inside of that, like you're talking even different weekly. I mean, it used to be a lot different with the change in affix. Well, there was a lot more changes in affixes, in Dragonflight, but now, I mean, it's not as much. Of course, but I think weekly, I mean, you can even talk about how the game is different. But I get it. It's not something that just kind of lingers around like Minecraft.
I think frequent goals
every 2 years.
Yeah, and goals to work towards, right? Like getting achievements, getting mounts, getting gear, all these things.
Yeah,
I think are enticing. But I just, I think everybody's just a little different, right? And so I know, dude, people out there could just play Minecraft 24/7 and they're happy. I think what happened was I made some really cool stuff with Redstone. My content blew up. It was doing really popular. I think for a short bit, I was the biggest Minecraft TikToker in the world for like a short bit.
No, stop.
There was a short bit.
You weren't.
No, I was watching numbers in terms of like video view numbers because the big guys weren't doing TikTok at the time.
Well, that's fair.
So like the big YouTube guys weren't doing TikTok. I was.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Are you sure about Tommy in it?
Yep. I was tracked. Yeah, he wasn't doing TikTok like at that point.
Dang.
It just wasn't on their radar. I don't think because TikTok wasn't really super monetized when I first started taking off with it. And
and it was just like they were definitely into longer form content.
Yeah.
Like it was hard to do short form content. Anyways,
we
talk about WoW here.
But anyways, all that to say, right? Like it just wasn't my thing. I burned out. But like, dude, we could make 2 more WoW podcasts, and I'd probably still be able to talk right for all of them. I just love. It's a game that I love. It's part of why I'm excited to have X here because I know he could talk about WoW for hours on end if he ever had to.
Yeah, complaining.
he probably does. He probably does play WoW or talk about WoW for hours on end.
Dude, so do I. Except I talk to myself about it, which is kind of weird, but
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to dig too much into this topic. It's just not a topic I want to spend tons of time on. However, we have to touch on it because now that we're talking about WoW this week, I have been getting messages from people that have they know nothing about World of Warcraft. They know nothing about World of Warcraft, and they're just messaging me like, "Can you explain the World of Warcraft drama to me?"
Wait, who said that?
Dude, I've got people on the Discord from like my Minecraft days. Ironically, I've had people that I know at like work who have asked me. They're like, "Dude, I see on like social media like World of Warcraft drama. What's going on?"
Where do they see this?
It's all over like TikTok and stuff, and like Twitter.
About what? Like, what's the drama?
Wait, there's no way. There's no way Chicken doesn't know. There's no way.
Dude, I don't. You know for a fact that I don't get on TikTok, rarely ever, and I literally just created an X. We'll call it Twitter because that's going to get confusing because technically we got an X in the Discord call, right? I created a Twitter like a couple weeks ago because I was like, maybe if this podcast thing takes off, maybe I should have a Twitter, right? And I still don't ever use it.
Don't worry. I use Twitter, but nobody ever responds to my posts. It's okay. I'm sad, but so anyways,
you never gave me your Twitter.
What?
I'll look it up. I'll look up your Twitter.
Yeah, I got Twitter. Goodness. I think it's like in the socials link here on Discord. I don't think you have to work hard for it. Just click rules and links and it's there. Anyways, I
just use the search bar.
Off topic, right? Off topic. Anyways, so the drama this week in World of Warcraft is actually so it's in hardcore. So it's hardcore WoW with the OnlyFans stuff that's been going on.
Oh my gosh.
And so basically they were doing a dungeon, right? They're running this dungeon and the group pulls too much stuff.
Who was it?
The only there's like a Yamoto or something, but the main one that people are talking about right now is PirateSoftware.
I didn't know if it was like
fun fact, I was watching it live. It was great.
Oh dang.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
That's actually great timing that you caught that. That's probably the most drama like in World of Warcraft in like years. So anyways, PirateSoftware and his group are running this dungeon. They overpull.
He's the guy that
Yeah.
He's the guy that used to work at Blizzard, right?
Used to work as Blizzard. His dad used to work as Blizzard. His dad is the guy that they modeled the kind of villain, villain from the Make Love Not Warcraft episode of South Park.
Yep.
And generally, he is like good guy PirateSoftware, good guy Thor, right? I think his name's Thor. Good guy Thor. People love him. Generally people love him. He's very knowledgeable. Now it's hard to tell how much of is him being super knowledgeable and how much is him just being able to talk in a way that always sounds correct, right? Those aren't always the same thing, and that
I've seen his content. I think he's knowledgeable. As someone that would understand a little bit of the context. I think he definitely is knowledgeable.
Yeah. But I'll explain. I'll explain why I gave that little footnote though. And so, anyways, the group overpulls, right? They overpull. And the group leader makes a call to run. And X, if I get this information wrong, you can correct me since you're watching it live. But the group starts to run, and in running, they very quickly pull another pack.
Oof.
And so at that point, they really can't run unless PirateSoftware, because he's the mage, unless PirateSoftware uses just basically spams a level 1 Blizzard or something and slows them down, right? That's like their only way to really get out there and live. That's the only way they get out is if PirateSoftware, being a mage, spams level 1 Blizzard. he books it out of there, like blinks away and just books it. Hovers his mouse, because his main complaint was he didn't have enough mana. Hovers his mouse over a mana gem, and I think he also had like a robe ability that would give him more mana.
Yeah, the mage robe, which would have given him as much mana as the gem, almost, if I remember correctly.
Yep, and a level 1 Blizzard really isn't using much mana at all anyways. So the problem is he actually probably could have saved his group. Like, most likely could have saved his group if he helped slow down the trash so that they could all run out of the dungeon together. Or at least save most of his group. Instead, books it out of there. Now, at the end of the day, if that was it, if that was the whole thing, I don't think the drama would be too crazy. I think people would be fine. They'd be like, okay, whatever. You know, they'll make a couple jokes and then move on. But I do think this is the first time that PirateSoftware has been kind of scrutinized like that as a content creator. And so rather than responding back and just being like, hey guys, really sorry, I got nervous, didn't want to lose my character, and I in the moment I made the call to get out of there. Looking back, it's possible I could have saved you, but I made a different call, right? Like, all it had to be was that. Like, all he had to do was like kind of apologize a little bit, not a full apology, but just enough of like, hey, I'm sorry that you died. Things could have been different, but just in the heat of the moment, I heard run and I ran. And I was too nervous to try and do any more than that, right? That's all it had to be. But instead, I think he doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down, basically trying to make the argument constantly that he did nothing wrong, that he did the right thing, that like that was the only, like, he went off about how that's the only possible thing that you could do in that situation. And so that's, I think, where people started to get really upset. Was that then he started making threats about like trying to get anybody who makes content off of what he's doing banned. And so he ended up getting kicked from the OnlyFans guild.
Oh dang.
So now he's not playing hardcore WoW ever again. Like he went on record, he's like, hey, I'm never playing hardcore WoW ever again. I'm done. And so, dang. I mean, at that point, you know, characters deleted anyways. Maybe he should have tried to save him. But it's hard because I think both sides handled it pretty poorly. Oh yeah. I think the people involved in the group should have recognized that, like, hey, we did call run. He did run, right? Like, that was the call that was made, even though more information came in. You know, they could recognize, hey, like, dude, the guy just panicked. He had a character he put hundreds of hours into, wanted to keep it alive. There's really no shame in that. Yeah. I think on both ends, neither groups were like willing to cede any ground whatsoever. And it's been like actually kind of crazy drama.
No, you mean no one wanted to yield? That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it wild? Like, dude, it was crazy.
Like, come on. That's not even that. Dude, that stuff happens all the time. Of course, no one wants to say, hey, it's okay, buddy. You didn't do anything wrong. Let me shake your hand. No, I can see exactly why he did it. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, and you made the biggest point out of all of it. You were like, I don't know who these other people are, but the biggest person was, you know, PirateSoftware. He's trying to save his content, man. Mm-hmm. He's gonna get, if he died, he's done. Like, people, I'm not saying he would drop significantly in views, but like, I mean, people are going to be like, oh, he's not doing it anymore. Like, I'm going to watch someone else that's doing it. I'm going to watch, what's his name? Millskelf or whatever.
Why would he use content for dying?
Because his character would be dead.
Well, then he just goes again.
Yeah, you make another one. I do think what hurts him is his brand is being the guy who knows everything, right?
Well, that's
his brand, right? And so I think what's hard is he was also in a position where he goes off about being like the most knowledge. He talks as if he's the most knowledgeable person about Mage.
Yeah.
And then you see him not do the thing that Mage would have been perfect for in that situation, right?
Yeah. Well, that's fair.
And so there is a level to which I think that disillusioned people where they went, wait a second. Maybe he wasn't confident. Maybe he was just cocky, right? And so it's just been interesting. By the way, though, like I don't really think he's in the wrong. I don't really think everybody else is in the wrong. I think people making threats to him. I think people like trying to like spite him or call him out. I think they're idiots. I think they need to calm down. Don't insult a guy. Don't trash a guy just over like choices in the game for content, right? like, wow, guys, they're literally doing just a run through of a 20-year-old game as a group because it's fun, right? So
A 20-year-old game, yeah, that's fair.
and not 20-year-olds like retail WoW's 20-year-old. Like we're talking, no, this is what WoW was
Yeah,
like
oh,
20
yeah.
years ago. No
Yeah,
updates
oh, yeah,
outside of if you die, you die. So
Yeah.
it just was interesting. X, you were watching it live. You've watched the drama unfold. Can you give us like just an idea of like how like big this blew up?
You play mage.
You play
So
Mage?
I sat in that Twitch chat for an extra 5 hours, and it was still going on.
Yeah.
Oh,
So Pirate was reporting that he had blocked 3,000 users off of his chat inside that window.
Mm-hmm.
jeez.
Wow.
So, and I mean, I stayed there for 5 hours and I left because I was getting kind of bored. It was just for 5 hours. It was just him being like, "There's nothing I could have done," and then just banning, and then that's it. So I got bored.
Oh
so I
my
moved on.
goodness.
But that was kind of how big it was.
Yeah, and that's another part too. Is like all the banning that went out, like the responses to a lot of it. I think it might be. I could be wrong, but I think it might have been the first time he's felt like pressure as a streamer, right, coming in from viewers. That he's because again historically he's been good guy Thor, and I don't say that sarcastically. Like the guy pays his mods wonderfully. He speaks really highly of things. He generally like has great ideas for how to improve like the culture at like gaming companies, right? So
Yeah.
he really is like everything else. He seems to be a great guy. Again, he's a streamer. We don't know him, right? Just as people listening to the podcast don't really know us, right? They build ideas of what they think, but they don't really know us.
I mean,
Yeah, they don't know swag stinks.
Yeah, dude, I stink pretty bad.
come on. Wow. Okay, that's fair.
I mean, dude, listen, I play World of Warcraft, and so that is I think that's a big piece for a lot of people. It's just like seeing him then just double down and not be able to say, "Oh, hey, like I made a mistake." I think but again, it's just it's almost like everybody involved in this just keeps making the wrong decision.
So, I get the drama part of it now, but like, is it really getting blown up that like people that aren't in that hemisphere are like, oh, what is this? What's World of Warcraft?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, because PirateSoftware is pretty big. He's pretty big outside of just WoW. In fact, it wasn't even because of WoW that he blew up, right? Like it's just the way he talks and does stuff. He just
that's
happens
true.
to have
Yeah,
history with WoW.
I think I was seeing some of his content before.
Doesn't he run a ferret shelter?
A ferret shelter?
I've heard something about that.
Maybe. I've that one is
Listen, I'm a PirateSoftware YouTube short video watcher. That's all I know.
So I think he might. I think he runs a ferret sanctuary. He runs a ferret sanctuary. So
that's kind of neat.
Yeah. Wait. There's actually a PirateSoftware Twitch account where they have live. Yeah, they have live video of their ferrets, so you can watch that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So again, genuinely, like I think he's often seen as a really good dude. I think this might have been that first time he encountered a lot of pushback, and rather than again, I think the best move would have been just to laugh with it, just laugh it off, it off. And instead of laughing off, I think he tried to push back and like ban people. By the way, though, I think it probably hit an insecurity. It probably hit something that like hurt, right? Like it probably emotionally hurt for him to start banning people. But anyways, let's move on from that because I don't really want to spend too much time just talking through drama.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, for real. Did you guys see any of the? Actually, why don't we before we talk about PTR stuff? Because I need a second just to drink a sip of water. Have you guys, Chicken? Do you want to explain what the new mount thing is for Mythic Plus?
What? Oh, isn't there supposed to be a new mount for that new IO rating, like the 2850? Is that what you're talking about? I think I saw something about
that. It's like
that.
2805 or 2850 or something like 2850. Rating.
And that's when you get the unlock. Your key doesn't deplete.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if they're tied together.
You don't? I thought they were.
Key not depleting is just if it's a key above 12, I think.
Yeah. It won't deplete below,
key below
12.
12.
It won't deplete below 12. So the way they worded it is very interesting. So the idea is that if you have a 12 and you don't time it, it won't go down to an 11. But we're not sure if that applies to an 8 or a 7.
Oh. Okay.
We're not 100%
What do you
sure.
mean, an 8 or a 7?
Like if you have an 8 and you don't time it, will that deplete? We're not. I'm assuming it won't, but we're not actually totally sure. They really only specified that from 12 to 11.
Oh,
It won't deplete.
I don't think I got that out of that article. Maybe I didn't like.
People
read
are
it
making
hard enough at
assumptions,
the time.
but the language Blizzard used was a little odd.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is tied into that same achievement. I think it probably is because they would have been around the same spot. So it'd be weird to have two things at the same spot. But yeah, so essentially, it's basically all time 12s, 2850 rating, season 2. You're gonna get the mount, which is pretty cool. It's the second mount. So the Keystone Master mount is still there, and now you have the Keystone Legend mount. Is what I'm assuming we're gonna call it, the Keystone Legend mount, the KSL.
KSL.
The KSL. Yeah. Which is cool. I think it'll probably be more difficult for some people. I know for us that's a difficulty, but X, you kind of live in a different world than maybe Chicken and I often live in with players. What are you kind of hearing for feedback from players who maybe run higher keys all the time?
Well, I mean, for people that aren't run high keys, it's just a no-brainer. You're just gonna get it and move on.
Okay.
But also, it's like, don't forget that every patch of an expansion, keys get easier.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's new keys, just having better stats and higher stats usually carries keys by a lot. If not only versatility, like one of my build has 20% verse, and this is the first patch.
Yeah.
So, like, you can, I guess, the more stats you get, the easier keys get, regardless of if it's still a 12. You can basically roll a 12, and it's gonna be easier and easier every patch.
That's a fair assessment. Yeah. And also, too, on top of that, they're changing affixes, right? So that 11 to 12 jump won't be as crazy anymore. Is that correct?
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't follow PTR that closely.
No worries. I believe if I'm correct on this, because right now going from an 11 to 12 is almost like going up like 2 extra keystone levels, right?
Yes.
It feels like you're going from like 11 to 13 or 11 to 14, and they are getting rid of that. So that massive jump isn't going to be there anymore. I think they still want 12 to be like the launching point for high-end keys, which is probably why they're making that achievement. Like, hey, you complete all 12s, and your key won't deplete below a 12. However, it won't be as crazy because right now, like, I look at it because I have all time 10s. I'm timing 10s right now on my second tank, right? So my second character is now timing 10s, and that to me feels like a pretty big accomplishment. That, like, having all my portals, I'm like, yeah, I got all my portals, and I'm doing portal runs on other characters. I feel pretty accomplished. You know, I've thought about doing 11s, and then I look at 12s, and I'm like, I'm not going to touch a 12. I'm just going to stay in 10s. 10s are fine for me. It's good enough. It's challenging. But that means next season, I'm going to look at that and be like, I need to push myself. I need to challenge myself. I know a lot of players I talk to, a lot of players I'm talking to right now are just upset. They're just like, I can't believe Blizzard would put a mount in there that I'm never going to be able to get. I'm never going to be good enough to get that mount. And I don't know, man. I want to know what both of you think, but I like prestige stuff. I like things that when I see somebody standing in Dornigal, I go, oh, wow, they got that. I really want to work hard to try and maybe some season I'll be able to get that, right? When I see somebody with a Mythic Raid mount, right? The final boss mount in Mythic Raid, I'm like, whoa, that's so cool. Or I see him with, like, is it the Gladiator title? I think Glad title. Like, I see them with that mount, I'm like, whoa, that's hard work. There's something I like, and gear and weapons aren't really that anymore. Even when we have legendary weapons, nobody cares, right? Like, if you're running around with Fearlath, nobody cares. Every two-hand wielder eventually got it, so it doesn't matter. And even if you have a legendary weapon, I'm probably still transmogging it into a shovel anyways. So you're not gonna know.
Oh my gosh.
You're not gonna know I have it. So I do like the prestige. Like, if I got that mount, right? If I got that mount and I'm going to keys afterwards, oh yeah, dude, I'm absolutely using that mount. I want people to look at me and be like, oh, whoa, he timed all 12s. Yeah, absolutely. What do you guys think when it comes to prestige gear? or items?
I think there's two different type of arguments you can make. There's one where like someone's just a collector, so it's not that they want this prestige; they just want the mount from the number that goes up, and that's a totally fair.
That's fair, yeah.
That's a fair want. But then personally, I feel like prestige and amount is not really a thing that much anymore because boosting is so relevant and accessible.
That's true.
I mean, I still fly every day on my Farak mount because I have it and I think it looks cool.
Yeah.
But I don't feel better because I have it or anything. It just looks nice, so I use it. If I didn't have it, I would use the blue one that I got for 6 months, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think?
That's
Jason?
pretty fair. Yeah, I mean, if someone is willing to pay the price to get carried in all 12s, like, just give them the mount. Like, oh my goodness, that would be nutty.
Yeah.
Anyways, I like it because, you know me, my constant rant all the time is, why would you ever run a key above a 10? Because you get nothing out of it other than, you know, a warm, fuzzy feeling that's going to go away after, 30 seconds.
Well, now
right?
you get more crests.
Now, okay, but
And technically, you can get a title.
Okay, I mean, come on.
I'm just saying you could get a title. X, have you ever gotten a title for a key season?
Yeah, and plus that, nah, I don't push nearly that hard.
Makes sense.
I don't have the patience. Also, I want to add, like, anyone that says like it's impossible for him to get it, that just doesn't feel true to me. Like, regardless of how good or bad you are when you started, you can make a lot of progression inside of one tier. For example, I know a guy who started in Castle Nathria, like that was his first tier, and by Sanctum of Domination, his second tier, he was raid leading, and by the next tier, he got CE. So
wow.
Pretty crazy.
Inside of an expansion, someone went from not knowing anything about the game to then getting CE, and that person to this day is smarter than me at WoW, but in a different way. Like, I play WoW intuitively, he plays WoW because he studies his rotation and he pays attention at his log and checks everything how he's supposed to do and does it. And every once in a while I ask him, how do you play Disc Priest? And he then pulled up QE Live, which is a website that healers use to like sim their gear and stuff, and he wouldn't use it for simming. He would use it to like purposely, for that one spell of that boss, how do I heal it as efficiently as possible? And then he would spend half an hour. I watched him spend half an hour on that website just moving his GCDs left and right to figure out how much healing he could output at that point.
Wow.
Dang.
Wow, that's impressive. And obviously, like, the thing is, you don't even need to be doing that for 12,
exactly.
Right? Like, you don't even need to be doing that for 12. I will say though, right? And maybe this conversation is going to pivot a little bit. So before we pivot the conversation, you mentioned that, like, well, like people could just buy, and I've heard that be like, oh, well, people can just pay for the runs, right? They can just buy the mount, basically pay for the runs and get the mount. And you know what? Whatevs, cool, they got it. I feel like I hear that argument sometimes, and to me, I don't always love hearing that argument, because then it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that achievement you got, well, guess what? It's stupid because you can just pay for it. And yeah, sure, somebody else did, but I still worked hard for it, right? Like, I still, like, I got all my portals this season, and I'm like pretty dang proud of that. I don't always get all my portals.
Did you pay for any of them?
No, not a single one. I worked hard. I got carried by friends. I didn't pay. I made friends, dude. I made friends.
Got carried by them?
No. I actually worked. I worked pretty hard. I pugged a bunch of them.
You did.
And now I'm running 10s on like a second character that I'm timing them up with, and that's been a challenge. Actually, Brewmaster is a mess. Brewmaster is a mess of a spec right now. And every time I think I understand it, there's like more to learn, which has kind of been fun. But also every time I have to learn more, it changes everything. But anyways, so to pivot that conversation, X, you made a comment, and I know this is something that you were pretty passionate about. Like, this is actually something I think in the past you got yourself in a little bit of trouble around people sometimes, because you're so passionate about it that, you kind of speak very bluntly about it. But I do think it would be an interesting topic to talk about for just a minute. player, like personal improvement, like personal responsibility at World of Warcraft is a really interesting conversation. I was in a raid team recently-ish. I joined a raid team recently-ish, and in that team, there's a comment made about how somebody was annoyed because they weren't being invited to their guilds, like I think AOTC runs or something, right? Their guild's AOTC push on the final boss. And I was like, okay. And I just asked questions. I was just curious. I was like, well, how are you performing? Are you keeping up? They're like, yeah, I keep up. I'm one of the best DPS on the team. I'm one of the best DPS on the team. I'm like, okay. And I was like, well, are you struggling like with mechanics? Are you dying to things easily? Like, there's got to be a reason. If you're not being invited for an AOTC run, there's got to be a reason. Because you're not. It's not like Mythic where you have a 20 cap. And as I'm watching, as we're running then the raid that night, this was maybe like a couple weeks ago. As we're running the raid that night, I'm just watching them die to like everything. Not even, and this was normal. This was normal difficulty. We were just kind of going in. I was farming loot on like a character, and I'm just watching them die to everything. And I was like, well, okay, that's probably why. That's probably why. And I think there's a lack of self-awareness. I think a lot of players aren't aware of how they can grow, right? Like, I think a lot of players think that they're at their peak, at the best that they could ever be, and they don't realize that, like, there's actually probably some easy tricks to, like, get around that, to get better, to improve, and you just have to want to. Like, you have to be willing to. But, X, I know it's a conversation you're pretty passionate about, right? When you... If somebody was to come to you and be like, I want to improve in Mythic Plus, or I want to improve in rating, like I just want to play my class better. Like, what are like usually the first tips that you would give somebody?
Well, first look at the def recap, and then if you have details or whatever, something like that, check at that def recap first, because that's always more detailed than the in-game one.
When you say death recap, what do you mean by that?
So when you die, there's release spirit, or that might be grayed out because you're in an instance combat. But on the right side, there's a death recap, and that will tell you what ability killed you. And if you mouse over it, it tells you what the ability's description and stuff. Yeah. And then read, is it something avoidable? Yes, then what could you have done to avoid it? If it's not avoidable, then what button could you have pressed to take less damage and not die? Yeah. And so start by looking at why you died. Sometimes you just die because you're rotted. Rotted means you didn't get enough healing, and even if you pressed every defensive, you just end up dying anyway. Yeah. That's very rare. Sometimes it happens, but never assume that you're rotted. Always assume that you messed something up and you could have played better. Yeah, I like what you said there real quick before you keep going. To always assume that you could have played better, right? Because I do think that's for a lot of people, myself included. You get to this point where you're just really content, right? And so anytime something happens, you like look for an excuse of like, oh, well, it was unfair because of this or that happened. And so I like what you said. I like how you said, like, no, first always assume that there's something that you could have played better, that there's something you could have done, a way to respond to it, a way to handle it. Just because I do think going with that mindset gives you more of a chance that you're going to improve coming out of it. That's all. Yeah. So for survivability, oh my god, that word's difficult for me. It's always a question of repetition and always having a fail-safe button that you can hit. Some classes have way less fail-safe, so you have to be way more careful, obviously. But something I've started doing, and I've gotten a lot of success in especially the last 3 or 4 bosses of this tier, was I use an add-on, Liquid Reminder, which there's a free version with MRT. Okay. So Method Raid Tool, I think it's called now. Yeah. Yep. And whenever there's a predictable big instance of damage, I put a little reminder that says use X defensive. And then I just use that defensive at that time every time, and I know that I will be safe. And if something goes wrong and then I need to use an extra defensive, I just shift the order of defensives to where, oh, I got a defensive right now, or I'm gonna die. Well, I'm just gonna greater invis, and then on the next turn when I was supposed to use greater invis, I'll use something else. Okay. And then I know that every time there's a big damage ability, I will have something. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And there are a lot of defenses out there. Yes, this expansion is the worst it's ever been for defensives. Everyone has like 5 defensives. some defensives might not seem like defensives, and sometimes you got to read a tooltip to like understand it's a defensive. It's really weird sometimes.
I think a good example,
yeah.
I believe on Priest, they have, is it Fade? Is it Fade that Priests have?
Yeah. Fade is a defensive.
Yep, but you look at it and you think it's just to drop combat. You're like, oh, just this helps me like hide. But it's actually like, no, popping is going to give you a little bit of a defensive in there too. Yeah, a lot of defensives are like really subtle.
Same thing for Priest. If you heal yourself with a flashlight or flashlight on any spec and you have the talent for it, it will give you a 10% defensive.
Really?
Yes, that's the thing.
Yeah, see, and there's so much. One thing, listen, I love World of Warcraft. One thing WoW doesn't always do the best though is give you all the information, right? It just, you really have to dig into it. You really have to use like the tooltips. I've been learning Brewmaster Monk a lot lately, been challenging myself. And I just found out on stream, I was so embarrassed. I found out on stream that I actually like totally misunderstood how Purified Chi worked. Like totally misunderstood it. And like as soon as somebody explained it to me, I was like, oh, let me go get a weak aura and like let me make a weak aura real quick to track this. Because otherwise I'll have no clue. I'll just have no clue when I should be like popping my defensives with Purified Chi. And,
go for it.
What were you saying?
Something I feel is important is especially whenever you're trying out a new class or you're just coming back to the game. And if you go ahead and like copy a build, the first thing you should do after you copy a build is read every single node one by one. Take like 20 minutes and just read them all, because some of them are just like dark and mysterious and you don't know why they're picked. But once you read them, you're like, okay, that makes sense. And like sometimes I just copy a build and I always get caught because I'm at a point where like I don't really look at the nodes of what they were picked. I just kind of assume how it's gonna play. And sometimes I just get caught. I'm like, oh, I do not have that button.
Yeah,
I'm in trouble.
Yeah,
and that's a bad reflex I've gotten, which I need to undo.
Yep. I think one of the best things I actually, it's something I really like about World of Warcraft. It's something I think keeps WoW fun for people for a long time. But it's that in WoW, it's not just how you play in the dungeon or in the raid, but it's how you prep before the raid and before the dungeon, right? So not just going out and buying your flasks, not making sure you have food, not making sure your armor's enchanted. All that's important, all that you should be doing. But there is a high value in WoW that like you need to go and do some research beforehand, read through notes, see what other people are doing, and that I know it's not everybody's fair. I know people are probably listening to the podcast right now and they're like, oh, swag, that just does not sound fun. I really don't want to be doing that. That's, if I have to do that, I'm not playing WoW, which is fine. I think it just depends on what difficulty level you want to be at in WoW, right? If you're like, I want to be mythic rating, I want to be running 10s, I want to get my portals, spend some time. Like spend some time, read through those talents, read through notes that whoever built that talent tree, why did they pick those things? Figure out, are there things that you're not tracking, right? Like are there things that the default UI it just isn't giving you information on? In my case, it was Purified Chi for my Brewmaster. Can I just grab? It took me, I don't know, like 1 minute to like go find, and they had a few of them, but to go find a Purified Chi tracker that I liked on weak auras, download it, right, and then just place it where I wanted on my screen. It took me a minute max, and now all of a sudden it completely has changed the way I play that spec. And so, I do like it. Chick, I know you're trying to jump in a little bit on something. What are your thoughts?
What?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were gonna say something.
You caught me off guard. I was like, wait, what are we even talking about? Oh my goodness.
We're just talking about like prep, going like how do you actually prep to succeed in dungeons? No, you're good. We're talking about like how do you prep to succeed in dungeons? Like prepare ahead of time, and not just learning the dungeon, but learning your character, your class, your spec.
So I'm terrible at this, and this is like the biggest thing I hate about tanking, and maybe the reason what everyone else hates about tanking. I feel like I can never pull the right amount of trash. Like like without fail, like I feel like I always screw that up. And this dungeon pull this season, I feel like is rough. And I say that because I don't ever remember it being that bad with the Dragonflight dungeons or in season 3 of Dragonflight when I started tanking. It's just this season, like that, like you basically have to like. There's no like fail safe, like, oh, I'll just grab this pack. You know, I didn't grab this guy. You know, I'll grab this.
Yeah.
I don't know. This season's just so rough with it. I mean, like Necrotic Wake, Grim Batol, like if you get to the end of those dungeons, well, Necrotic Wake's not as bad. But Grim Batol, if you miss some, like you're doomed. Like you basically got to go back to the start of the dungeon, right? And you gotta walk, right? So I use that. I forget what the site's called. I just type in like Grim Batol routes, and it pops up this this site, and it shows like certified routes that people have done.
Yeah.
To get the right thing. But even looking at those, I still fail and miss percentage like 95% of the time.
Dude, I'm pretty good now. At this point, I don't think there's any dungeons I'm ending up short in. Threads was it for me for a minute, where City of Threads I was a little short, but I've kind of started just like grabbing chunky packs. When you get to the stairs going up to the final area, I just start, and those packs are fun because you can like chain pull like 3 of them or something. Because I think I scare my healers a little bit, but it gets fun. It gets enjoyable there. I always enjoy that. But yeah, to kind of cap off that conversation point, I do think it's important for players to take time and prep. That is your prep work. And if you have to get into like the character mindset of it, right? That's fine too. Like whatever makes that enjoyable. But go, okay, I'm going to be going to do this content. How do I show up prepared? I always think of, I'm a Philly guy. I think of back in the day, right? When Allen Iverson was being interviewed because he wasn't like showing up to practice. And they're asking him like, dude, what about practice? And he's like, practice? You talking about practice? No, we're talking about the game. And he had this idea in his head that like, dude, like all that mattered was how he performed on the court when the fans were present, and not like how often he practiced or how hard he worked. And at the end of the day, right, like Allen Iverson went into basketball. I know we're making a basketball reference on the gaming podcast. I'm sorry about this, but it's one of my favorite references to make. He goes into the NBA as like this like amazing like new player, like amazing rookie player. And then he kind of leaves disgraced. By the time he leaves the NBA, nobody really likes him anymore. He's fallen off. He got worse. He got a lot worse, and his attitude was terrible. And then you have Kobe Bryant who comes in. Like Kobe Bryant comes in and he's like a nobody, like absolute nobody, barely makes it in. But he practiced so hard. Like he was always practicing that by the time he leaves the NBA, he is considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time, and especially one of the most recognizable basketball players of all time. So I do think, right, like, it's not just about the game, it's about the practice, right? Like, what are you doing to learn your class? What are you doing to learn your spec? Not just in-game, but, like, take some time. Learn, as you said, Chicken, learn your routes, right? Is there an add-on that you need? Is there a tool that you need? There's a lot of information in WoW. A lot of information.
A lot of tools.
And add-ons are not a bad thing. Add-ons should not be a bad word. Don't treat them like a curse word.
Whoa.
Add-ons... The way that I've had to think about add-ons that has changed it for me is add-ons help me process more information, right? I take some of that computing off my brain and I place it onto something else so that my brain can do other things. I want my brain to be at max capacity the whole time I'm in an M+ dungeon. I want it at max capacity. And I want my brain... Yeah?
Something we do say is whenever, for example, a raid leader had to delegate a lot in one of the boss's progression, because one of the mechanic is you have to mark on Broodtwister, you have to mark every single egg in Mythic, because if you don't and you miss an egg, it's an insta wipe.
Ooh.
And that's something our raid leader in the first pull was like, I'll just do it myself. And then he quickly realized that by the second pull, he did not have what we call the enough bandwidth to do that. It just takes too much bandwidth for him to solo those. So then he split and gave other people responsibilities. Now you can equate that to more add-ons, where the add-ons will do the responsibility for you.
Yep, absolutely. And because a lot of times too, I think when people are like, "Well, I don't want to use add-ons," they're not saying I'll just do it myself. Oftentimes, what people are saying is, "Well, I just want someone else to tell me when to do it." Right? So like when we're raiding, someone's like, "Well, I don't really want to use. I don't want to get weak orders for this." It's like, well, then what do you want? Our raid leader to have to worry about it? No, right? Like don't give him more, or me. I guess this season was me lately, right? Don't give me more responsibility. Like I've got enough, you know. And it's that way in the dungeon. When you're in a dungeon raiding, whatever, like you want your brain capacity, like you want your bandwidth to be filled, right? Like you want to be all in, focused in, honed in, but you want to have your brain processing the things that are most important that your brain will succeed at the best, right? Yeah. And that's like analyzing the RNG of WoW and responding, getting your rotations out tight and your placements strong, right? And then you find those things that you're like, you know what, an add-on can help do some of that processing, so my brain can focus on the more important things. And when you have that down, like that's where you become super successful. And that's what changed it for me. When I started thinking about that way, that's when I got like really into weak auras. I was like, dang, like that's smart, right? Because like now all of a sudden, like even like when the purified chi thing came up, right? And I was like, oh, I'm using purified chi wrong. My initial reaction was like, okay, can I have weak auras track that so I can see a visual on my screen, and that will help me better understand how to get more shield right out of my celestial brew or whatever it is.
It's also, to extend on your brewmaster point, sometimes you need an add-on for some classes. Sometimes Blizzard really messes up their design and don't give you any in-game display as to what you're supposed to do. One of the best example was how the expansion started on Frost Mage.
Yeah.
You could not play Frost Mage if you did not have a specific weak aura that told you when one of your proc was happening, because your entire spec was built around that proc, but nothing in game told you it was happening. So you needed a weak aura to tell you it was happening.
Yeah. And I want to add a little footnote to that, because I'm sure we have people who are listening who are like, what are you talking about? I played Frost Mage just fine at the beginning of the expansion. I had no trouble. I want to just reminder real quick. X plays WoW at a very, very high standard and expectation. Runs high keys. He is a cutting edge mythic raider this season. You guys got Xortiq down, right? I think I saw you had her on farm.
Yeah, we killed her twice so far.
Yeah, which is pretty impressive. And so when he's talking about these things, he's a lot of this is important because his group, right? They're looking at this and they're going, "Crap, we need to do 3% more damage. What on earth can we do to juice out another 3% more damage, right?" And so, when you're doing lower, easier content, there's a lot of things that you'll miss, and that's also an encouragement, right? As you start to do higher and more difficult stuff, as your key level goes up, don't be content, right? Like, if I jump into a +6 on my Brewmaster, I don't think about the Celestial Brew or the Purified Chi thing at all. Like, I don't care. It's not a problem. But then the moment I get into 10s, I start to feel really weak, and then I go, okay, well, I have to master this, and once I master that, I'll feel really confident. And so, if you're sitting there, you're like, well, I don't know if I need that. That's fine, but just know as things get more difficult as you grow as a player and do harder content, that will impact it. But just to pivot the conversation, change it a little bit. There are there's some interesting feedback from the PTR that I saw that I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting. So one of which is Bran Bronzebeard. I don't think we'll probably discuss it much. It's just information. Bran Bronzebeard will retain his levels now going into season 2 for Delves.
Okay.
But they'll increase his level overall. So like I think right now you can get him to level 60, I think. And so next week or next season you'll be able to get him to level 80. But if you have him at 60 now.
Expansion?
What?
He just gets an expansion?
Yeah, he basically gets I guess it would be 60, 70 would be an expansion, but yeah. Something like that. Bran gets his own little expansion. I think originally they were going to wipe Bran back to 0, and I think that upset players. If I'm being honest with you, I think that's what they should have done. I think they should be wiping Bran back to 0.
Bro, who cares? It's Delves.
But if you want Delves to be taken seriously, I think, right? Because like if you think about PvP starts back at 0, rating starts back at 0, Mythic Plus starts back at 0, right? Like you kind of naturally reset all those. Now you could be like, well, you still have to get your gear. You have to get your gear up. But I think kind of like starting off your Delves with a maxed out or fairly maxed out. But I think it depends on what that means, right? Because they might say, oh yeah, you get to keep your Bran at level 60, but like that level 60 really only feels like what level 5 was before.
Well,
right?
if you think about it, brand not resetting just makes it equal to what eye level is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Eye
fair.
level doesn't reset until going to the next patch. Like anyone that's mythic geared right now will definitely have an easier time gearing into next patch than someone who's normal eye level.
You know what? That's a good
So it's kind
assessment.
of like the equivalent.
That is a good assessment. They did say too that it's going to be a pretty quick catch up. So if you, let's say you're coming in fresh, your brand is level 1. They did say they were working on a way to make that that 1 to 60 a little bit quicker. A good catch up mechanic. The other bit of feedback that Blizzard has come back with, that's a change, is on pets for hunters. So I don't know if you had heard, Chicken, but they got rid of pets for marksmanship hunters, and they were just gonna get this like eagle thing, right? It's like this eagle that maybe like swoops in occasionally, does some stuff, but it's not a real pet, right? Like it's not like a UI or an AI pet like hunters currently have. It kind of operates separately. You're not supposed to think about it. It's just there.
Yeah, it's like the arcane mage pet.
Yeah, kind of like the arcane mage pet. However, a lot of people got upset. There's a lot of players where having a pet as a hunter is really important to them. It means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you could argue, oh, go play a Beastmaster Hunter. But then Beastmaster Hunters kind of get overwhelmed with like pets, right? You have a lot of pets. And if they go to survival, that forces them to play a melee spec. And so there's a lot of people who are like, no, I just want to play.
Come on.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who want to play marksmanship, and they want to have their pet. They love their pet. They're right. They've got attachments to their pets. They got a name for their pet. Their pet's been with them forever. They worked hard to find that pet, whatever the case might be. So Blizzard's come back and they've said, hey, I think it's a talent. There's going to be a talent or something you can grab that will. I don't think it should be a talent, if I'm being honest, but I think it is a talent. We'll see. There's a talent that you can grab that will let you have your pet back. And I guess you'll just do a tiny itty bitty bit less damage, and then your pet will make up for that damage.
No, not exactly. It's MM Hunter already has that option. It's just not exactly how it works. So basically, MM Hunter right now is a passive called Lone Wolf.
Yes, so they're getting rid of Lone Wolf.
Yeah, so it's just being replaced by something else.
No,
basically.
No. So
isn't it?
No. So like Lone Wolf, right? Like, right, gets rid of your pet unless you just do more damage to compensate.
Yeah.
Think like Lone Wolf, but like really, really small, like a really small difference. So the idea is Lone Wolf would essentially be the default, right? So the default is you don't have a pet, you just have the eagle thing that flies around. And now there's a talent. And from what I'm gathering, let me actually pull up the what they said. As it said, in our next BTR build, there will be a choice node on improved Spotter's Mark called Unbreakable Bond that restores call pet and associated pet functionalities. Additionally, this talent will improve the durability and damage output of your pet to better compensate for the potential throughput loss. So I don't fully know what it means. But what I'm gathering from it, is it's actually probably going to be, your pet's probably going to do almost nothing. It's probably going to be more of a visual thing.
Yeah, I mean...
That you have to use a talent for?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, right now, the people who play marksmanship, who really value damage output, are playing Lone Wolf already.
Yeah, you never play pet as an MMO.
Yeah.
You never play.
The people... Yeah. Like... Any competitive hunters playing marksmanship are not having their pets out. So what?
The only time you summon your pet is for some, like for example, a Mist of Turnicide wall pull. That's the only time you pull a pet. Or if you're doing solo content and you're under geared and you don't want to risk dying. Yeah, that's the only time you do it.
Or you're in a group and they picked you because you're a hunter and they thought you had bloodlust, and now you have to summon your pet, which causes you to do less damage, just so you can use bloodlust. So that's being fixed. Marksmanship hunters will just have bloodlust on their bar by default. They don't have to. It's just there. They'll just have it.
Is it just marksman or all hunters?
I think marksman.
Okay,
I'd have to look into it, but I think it's marksman specifically. So, but the idea is there are a lot of people out there who maybe aren't playing hunter in a highly competitive way.
Yeah.
That are just saying, dude, I like playing marksmanship. It's fun to me. I enjoy it, and I really like having my pet out. I just love the feel, and I think it's good that Blizzard did this because, again, that has been, Even though you could argue, well, a lot of them play lone wolf now, right? It has been an element of hunters since the dawn of time in World of Warcraft that they have their pets with them. And so,
Yeah.
right, to me, it was weird. The moment they said, oh, yeah, there's going to be a hunter spec now that just does not have a pet at all, except this eagle thing, but not like a personalized pet. And, I don't know. To me, I was like, you got one class that has personalized pets. You got it, Blizzard, you have to find a way to make that work. And so I think this is a good answer. Even if it's like almost exclusively just visual, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although a lot of people would argue pet UI or pet AI kind of stinks anyways, and they clutter up and block mechanic markers, so who knows?
They're not too bad.
Says the guy who plays Unholy DK. Spawning like
I literally just said they're not
undead,
too bad.
Spawning 30 undead, and then I can't see frontals.
Dude, that's not how it works.
I'm just messing
Bro,
with you.
now the real question is, are they going to let every unholy spec have a pet? No, just kidding. Or every DK spec. Just kidding.
Dude,
that'd be kind of cool.
You got that cooldown.
Yeah. And the cooldown's not bad, right? What is it? You spawn a pet for a minute, and then it's on cooldown for a minute.
Yeah, something like that.
I think it's like a 2-minute cooldown or something, and then it's out for a minute. So like, if you time it well, you have it up like 50% of the time, which is pretty good.
Yeah,
which is pretty good.
That's not too bad, and you can always control undead and just keep it.
Yeah, that's true too. Are there any good control undead spots this season?
No idea.
Normally, I'm pretty good about it, but I don't.
Necrotic Wake. That's true.
Oh, dude, I didn't even think about Necrotic Wake, man. I've been missing out. Dang it. I didn't even think about that.
The one that smashed the ground in Necropolis, I forgot.
Dude,
it's not the Abomination, but it's the other like Stitch looking thing.
Yeah. I love the it's next season in Theater of Pain. There's that one like Captain Mob type thing. I really like that. I really like that guy. I'll usually grab him. It's in the if you're doing the like the warrior section first. I don't remember what they called it. But the one where you have to do like the little PvP boss fight.
I hope they rework that boss, by the way.
What? Yeah, you hope they rework it?
Yeah, I hope they rework that boss. It is so badly designed.
Dude, that boss is so weird. Hey, heads up. If you are listening to the podcast and you were not doing dungeons back in Shadowlands, next season there's a dungeon called Theater of Pain. The second boss, I think it's the second boss most people go to. It might not be the second one you go to, but the second one most people go to. There's a segment where the boss will throw you down into an arena with another player, and you guys have to PvP to death. And then once one player dies, then you just pop back up and keep fighting. Or that player won't die. Like once one player gets down to like 1 HP or something, you get popped back up. I think their health goes back up after that, correct?
Yes, they go back to full HP.
Yeah, they go back to full HP. So like nobody's gonna die from it. Big piece of advice. You'll learn it pretty quickly, but you don't want to do it on your first walk-in. If you get thrown down there and you start PvPing with another player, dude, don't pop your bubbles. Don't use shields. Don't try to heal yourself while you're down there. There is no honor. There is no honor in being the one who wins that little PvP match. Because all those things just drag out how long that little PvP match goes on for. And really, you want to get down there and die as fast as possible and come back up. And so if you know for sure the person you're getting thrown down with like just has insane damage, yeah, dude, just let them burst you. If you get thrown down, you're like, I don't know this other player very well. The two of you just burst each other, but don't heal, don't defensive, like just
do not use a CD to kill the other person.
Don't waste your CDs either, right? Just try to like be fast. It's an interesting one. You'll see it when you do it. You'll see. I don't want to spend too much time.
Do you get a buff if you win, or
I
like?
don't think so.
No.
What? What's the point of it then?
I think it's literally you just get thrown down. You have to fist fight, and then you come back up. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. So
what's up with just pointless like things in Shadowlands that they did?
People in Shadowlands would turn around, would face their back at the other person, and then would spam sit, because if you're sitting while turned down, you're way more likely to get crit and die faster.
Oh wow, that makes sense. That's actually a great idea. I didn't even know that. Speaking of dying quickly, yo, have you guys been playing Plunderstorm?
Not at all. No.
No, Chicken, have you been playing?
X, come on, you gotta play
Dude,
Plunder Storm.
you gotta squat up with us.
I'm grinding another game right now.
Dude,
don't know what
Satisfactory is not another game, bro. Come play Plunder Storm.
I'm at 700 hours and I haven't not finished a game yet. I gotta finish it. I gotta commit.
Oh my gosh,
dude, I really
Plunder.
I've had a lot of fun in Plunder Storm this season. I've been streaming it a bunch, and like I think it's because they don't have the battle pass, but instead like you just get gold or the plunder, and they can just buy the items that you want out of the store.
Oh, dude, so much better. 100%.
It's so much better. And then it's more incentivizing to me because then I go, oh, I want this thing. Like I went and like immediately bought all the things I wanted, and then now I'm looking at all the stuff that I absolutely don't need and will never use, and I'm just like, well, you know what? I'm still having fun playing. I might as well go unlock that too. And so the incentive of it actually is like really awesome. I'm having a blast doing it. And so I really enjoyed Plunder Storm. I hope this is something we see come out every other season or something like that. We did have it last season, right?
Yeah, well, it was in between that era where there's nothing else to do in season 4 and launch.
Yeah, but it was before Remix, right?
During it was
definitely before. It was definitely before.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it was Plunder Storm, then Remix. And yeah, this season's been an odd one because we had the anniversary event start so early that forced an early 0.5. So I imagine this might have been their way of trying to offset that. So I'm hoping we don't have Plunder Storm again next season.
No,
but I would like to see it yearly, right? If we had Plunder Storm once a year, that'd be pretty dope. I'd be down with that.
Once a year? Yeah, I could see that. I think they'll do it towards the end of season 3 again, but I thought we were supposed to see like a Legion remix at some point.
They've talked about all sorts of things. Legion remix would be interesting.
Or was it something else?
I don't know. WoD remix would be fun. I'm game for like a WoD remix. I think that would be fun. Even though a lot of people hate WoD, I think it'd be
WoD
good.
remix would go hard.
Yeah, because it would have all the best parts of WoD and not the worst parts of WoD. Because it's a short form thing, right? So it's not gonna be here for a couple of years. You're doing it. You're doing all the content. It's out right on release. Whereas WoD was a problem where because everything they promised, they only released like half the stuff they promised that they would release, and then like you had these huge drought moments in WoD and things were just weird. But like leveling and questing in WoD was awesome. Questing was awesome. The zones were awesome. Dungeons were cool. Raids. WoD had some cool raids, and so it would be awesome to like do a remix for WoD.
WoD.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never played it outside of like time walking, you know.
Yeah,
I think if they were to do another remix, I would like to see some changes to like how hard you power scale stuff.
Yeah.
Because like
bonkers.
it made playing a caster extremely unfun. You started your cast, by the time you were done, the boss was dead, unless it was a mythic boss, in which case you got to do like 10 casts or something, and then it was dead. You never got the time to finish a rotation in your burst before the boss was dead, making melees extremely strong because they don't have any cast time to it. They just swing and it dies.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah, I think there's a lot. They probably have a ton of notes from Remix that they're like, okay, we got to work on these things. We got to improve these things. I think we'll see major changes when we see Remix come back because there are, right, like. I mean, the frogs, bro. That's all you have to say. The frogs, right?
Frogs.
Like Remix comes out and like some people got on before anybody else and just started spam killing frogs for like insane power scaling, right? And then Blizzard's like, oh, never mind, we gotta get rid of that. And then you just have these really strong players running around left over. So I think we'll see the next Remix be a little bit more balanced. I wouldn't hate a Remix Legion. But I will constantly say that a Legion Classic would be a bad idea.
We've talked about that.
Well, so the idea is that like Legion Classic is too similar to retail WoW, especially because of the M+ scene and the way that rating is set up. That like if a Legion Classic came out, I think it would actively just pull on the player base that loves playing retail, right? Classic players don't care about a Legion, right? Like. Classic players don't want M+, right? So the idea of an M+ expansion is like, no, that's why they have Classic, because they want to be away from that.
I think the goofiness of Legion M+ could actually go hard with how stupid like it was designed back then.
Yeah.
I think it could go hard. I'm gonna be honest.
No, I think it would be fun. I think it would be really fun. I think the problem is it would pull from the retail player base. It wouldn't pull from the players because the people who love M Plus and would want to go back to Legion M Plus also play retail M Plus, right? I think it's just different, right? The people who love Classic aren't like wanting to spam keys all day long.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's my thought. My thought is it would be really fun, but it would actually I actually really think it would just pull. I would think it would hurt retail a lot more than like Classic Vanilla or Wrath of the Lich King could. All right, so we're gonna change topics one more time before we get to our listener questions coming up in a little bit. But X, we got you on here, and we just want to hear we kind of want to hear from you a little bit after this raid season, after season 1, the War Within, Narubar Palace. How was the Mythic raiding experience? Like, how do you think this raid tier was?
It was actually a really weird tier where like the first 4 bosses got obliterated.
Yeah.
And then you just hit that one wall that just seems misplaced because of how squished up the raid is.
Yeah.
When's the last time we've had 8 bosses? Last one was 9, right?
I think the last one was 9. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Probably
the last.
What was it, Razagath?
Yeah.
Was that 7?
No, I think Raz might have been 8.
Yeah, it was 8. Yeah.
Call me crazy, but I feel like 8 bosses is too short. 9 is 8 bosses feel short, very short. I feel like 9 to 10 is a sweet spot. Going above 10 is crazy. Going under 8 is absolutely nuts. So
that's a dungeon, man.
Yeah, basically. With Theater Pain coming back, it's basically a dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like the raid was so weird because like you kill the first 4 bosses pretty quickly. I think we killed them in like week 3 or something. And then we just hit Brute Twister and we're just like, well, we're gonna be here for the next month and a half.
Yeah.
Because that boss was just crazy. And even when we killed it, it was like a super nerd version. That boss, like I said earlier, that's when I started talking about the bandwidth thing. You need to mark every egg, and then on top of that, you need everyone in the raid to agree to a specific weak aura that will tell you to go on which egg. And if one person has the weak aura that is not in the right version, they will have the wrong information being displayed to everyone, so they're gonna go to the wrong marker. And on top of that, that is not just a weak aura thing. It also affects DBM and Bigwig because they also have their own version of that. But they don't work the same way. They have different priorities. So you can't use those. You have to disable those. And sometimes someone disables it, it doesn't save the setting and it stays enabled. So then you wasted another pull. So I think we spent 30 pulls just fixing people's system, just to make sure everyone was working on the same thing. It's one of those bosses that's just like that, and it's really infuriating.
Yeah, and it really feels like it comes out of nowhere, right? Because you're going from the first 4 bosses that were pretty much give me's. Now, I will admit our raid team did not do Mythic this season. Which is part of the reason why we brought you in. We were wanting to, but we just kind of lost steam. We were struggling keeping the players after we got AOTC. But from what I understand, from what I've seen, what I've witnessed, is that the first 4 bosses are pretty pushover, and then you just hit a wall. It's kind of like, for anybody who's been looking to M+, as we were talking about earlier, right? Like, that 11 to 12 jump just out of nowhere is way harder, and that's like a cutoff point for people. I think they did the same thing, and maybe it's intentional. And by the way,
No, it's not.
It's hard to tell because there is something nice for players to be able to look at Mythic Raid and be like, okay, am I a 4-boss Mythic Raider or am I an 8-boss Mythic Raider?
Yeah, I just feel like the Blizzard it didn't feel intentional that the first 4 it felt intentional that the first 4 bosses were easy. But it did not feel intentional that the 5th and 6th bosses were some of the hardest bosses in history.
Yeah.
It did not feel intentional. For example, Zymox, like I watched it on Wall first, And that boss was so difficult that they had to drop a tank, use a shaman for his honk totem.
Yeah.
So basically, you put the totem down and you can die. As long as the totem is down, you get a free res.
Yeah.
So they had to have the shaman put a totem down, and then the tank would die on purpose to drop his stacks. That way you don't need a taunt swap. So then people started doing that, and then they realized that was still not enough. So then they brought a priest in, and priests have something where when they die, they can res themselves on top of resing someone else for free without costing a B res.
Oh, yeah.
So then they just had 2 priests, a resto shaman, and they B-res the tank 3 times that way, on top of keeping an extra B-res, because they just needed as much damage as possible, because the damage check was just at the very limit of what people were capable of doing. It was one of the hardest boss in history, especially for its positioning in the raid. It was crazy. Blizzard missed the mark by so much.
I mean, this whole, I mean, granted, tank player here, right? So as a tank player, I'm looking at the, I'm looking at performance of everybody, and it's, it was interesting looking at Race the World first. It's like, well, on this boss, we're only using 1 tank, but on this boss, we're using 3 tanks, and it did seem kind of all over. Like, I even know, like, in Heroic, it was kind of funny, because I think on some of our Heroic fights, we would get to, like, court, and I'd be like, hey, man, like, this isn't going to kill me. I can solo tank these guys. And so, like, I would always encourage, like, our other tank just to swap to DPS, just to make it easier. Like, I'm not going to die on this boss. But then there's, like, other fights where, like, if you're not hitting your defensive in, like, a 0.5 second window, you're dead. And so it was I had fun. I really enjoyed raiding this season. I thought the bosses were cool. I thought the areas were cool. The fight rooms like were pretty interesting. I do feel like it was there's definitely a hard wall that occurred, and I do agree. I do think that it was intentional. The first 4 bosses were easier, but there was no, like, stepping stone coming out of the first 4 bosses. It's almost like you're right. It's almost like there should have been 9 bosses, and the boss between Rashanan and Brood should have been somewhere in the middle, right? But even Brood was a wickedly hard fight, and Princess was hard, right? Like, granted, they're mythic raid fights, and so I'm just watching from the outside. But even in our heroic runs, we were feeling it.
Like, I mean, I'm complaining that they're difficult, but I'm gonna be honest, that's what I loved about them.
Yeah.
I loved every single one of those fights, except council court, whatever it's called.
Court, yeah.
That boss just stinks. There's nothing great about it.
Has there ever been a court fight that you are particularly excited about?
No.
Like a council fight.
Oh, council fight. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. They call them councils, courts, etc. But
I think the most exciting was the Council of Blood from Castle Nathria.
Oh, with the dancing.
The silly little dance. The dance brought nothing to the fight, but the fight was interesting. Where, like, there was 3 targets, but in reality, you had 1 target to focus, because if you damage the other one, you're just doing useless DPS.
Yeah. So, X, I want to ask you a question real quick, right? I'm trying to think through, like, our listeners, and I know a lot of our listeners aren't really mythic raiders, and so I want them to be able to walk away from this podcast going, you know what, I got something. I got something I can use out of that. If we have any listeners who maybe are newer to WoW, or they're aspiring to get into mythic raiding one day, right? Like, they want to get into mythic raiding. Mythic raiding is, like, a little bit tougher. How do you start that process, right? Like, how do you find a mythic raid team? Should you just start pugging it at first, or do you want to, like, look for a team right away? What's the trick?
So I'll just lay it out there. There's no mythic pugging raid scene. That's just not a thing. It's very unfortunate. It should be, especially this tier. This was a perfect tier for that, but Blizzard didn't fix the problem that caused that. But whatever. And if you want to start mythic raiding, the easiest step, well, not easiest, but, like, the thing that feels more natural is to just try and push your heroic team into the first boss of mythic, and then maybe the second, if you can reach that point. If that's not feasible, early mythic raid guilds will look a lot at logs, and just base their entire decision of if they'll take your application based on that. So get some good heroic logs if you can. And then there exists a Discord server called Recruitment and Community NA. I'm assuming there's an EU one.
Yeah.
Where you can just you join it, and you might have to do some steps to like set up your Discord to where it says if you're Alliance, Horde, NA, EU, or whatever CE player or not. And they have multiple channels for recruiting. Some where you just post your reference. So like, I've been raiding for X amount of time. This is what I've did this patch. I'm a mage, and etc. And then a recruiter might reach out to you. If they might reach out, or the other way around. Some guilds will then post their reference, and then you can directly message whoever they say to message, and then just start talking with them. And hopefully see where it goes. You can try and just apply to multiple places, but then you always get that awkward conversation of like, yeah, I've been talking to you for weeks, but like I'm in a guild now, so I would go one by one and be very selective about your guild, because there are some places that are just not worth going. I still remember, I still have that one bad experience I have in my mind, and that scared me from searching for another guild for a while now, but
yeah, that'll happen. Dude, yeah, it's and I think it's interesting what you said about the pug scene too, because this season, I feel like, again, we've harped on it, but those first 4 bosses were not terrible. Like, they're pretty easy to deal with. Even to the point where I believe for a minute there, people were just running them with no healer. I think last week people were no healering the first 4 bosses.
I believe it's still a thing right now.
Yeah, because the ring, the Siren Isles ring, was powerful enough that they all just put the healing gems in and ran with it. And so they're literally running the first 4 mythic bosses with no healer. So there really is a difficulty disparity, and also an overpowered ring in the game that creates that. But what I found with our guild was we got AOTC, but there just was, for whatever reason, this season, the momentum isn't strong. And so we got AOTC. We had a good raid team. We would have had a great shot at it, but we just lost momentum. We just lost steam, and we could not keep the players, which actually leads into one of our listener questions. I know you had messaged me when the question first popped up and was like, hey, can I answer that? I really want to answer that question. But we have a question coming in from Glock on our Discord, and he says, we used to have a 10-man hardcore mode hard mode in the past. I'm a boomer, and I've played every version of WoW to date. I get that 20-man was made for balancing and class distribution, but we've went past this, and class stacking will happen in Mythic if the class is strong enough. Classes aren't balanced from a utility perspective enough to still argue that 20-man is the best balance. Right now, the biggest challenge of Mythic is the roster mechanic. Then it's a war of attrition, and people will finally circle back to, can you kill a boss fast enough? Sorry, I lost track. All of it to say, sorry, it's a long post, but all of it to say, they're in a guild, right? Their guild's been going for over 8 years, and their raid roster is 10 to 20 people, and they are struggling, right? Some of them have even been playing together for 20 years, and they're just struggling to at the end of their heroic run to get people into Mythic and like maintain that, right? So they're wondering, like, why is Blizzard not brought back? Like, wouldn't it be a good idea for Blizzard to bring back flex rating, or even just make it 10-man instead of 20-man?
Well, the most obvious response is there's 13 classes for 10 spots. That doesn't really work. And I think the best comparison you can do is to M+, that has a similar issue where there's 5 spots for 13 classes and 35 specs, something like that. Where at that point, all it comes down to is, well, we can't fit every raid buff, so let's just fit the best one in on top. But it's not just a question of raid buff too. It's at that point also, since you can only have so many, just get whatever is the best at doing damage. I was watching Growl at some point, and he was explaining that, yes, raid buffs are important for M+, and can do a lot, but at some point, if someone just cranks, they just crank. Like, if you, like, for example, Enhancement Shaman is, like, I was going to reference Enhancement Shaman, because, like, they're extremely strong right now. Yeah. Although they're kind of a bad example, but, like, they just crank. I don't know if you've seen an Enhancement Shaman getting some good procs, but he can just do millions upon millions of DPS without even trying. And at that point, even if they didn't have Cap Totem, Fury Totem, whatever it's called, Sky Fury, even if they didn't have that, they would still get invited because they just slam so hard. So regardless of the amount of players you can have in a group, it will always come down to who cranks the hardest.
Yeah. Well, and as I looked at the question too, and I was thinking about it a little bit, it's tough because I'm sure there's reasons for it, and we might say things, and then tomorrow Blizzard comes out and goes, "Hey, heads up! Next season we're gonna have flex rating for Mythic Plus, or we're changing it to 15-man instead of 20-man."
Also, I want to add before you continue that I'm not against 10-man. I feel like if there was a 10-man, that would be absolutely insane for like the Mythic scene. It would be great. But I just don't think it's feasible without like just losing so many players that just play like the more niche specs that don't get much views, and then I have even less of a chance of getting into a group because it's just half the spots. Like I think a great thing that 10-man would bring is in a 20-man, there's always that problem between the best player and the worst player. That best player always has to wait for the worst player to catch up and understand the mechanic before they can continue in the fight. Because right now, with the way things are tuned and designed, a lot of the time, someone messing up a mechanic can just wipe your raid entirely.
Absolutely, right. And that's what I was talking at the I think beginning of the podcast or earlier when we were talking about the improvement thing, right? Like, you know, this person saying, well, I don't know why I'm not getting invited to this fight. And it's like, well, you know, like one person dying on that fight changes that whole fight. It just radically changes the fight. I also wonder too, in the roster question for Mythic, rating is, you know, it kind of forces, like, I'm trying to find a way to phrase it, but Mythic is the peak of difficulty for rating in World of Warcraft, right? And the moment you add flex into something, that changes the difficulty. I remember 2 seasons ago, season 3 Dragonflight, we went into, oh gosh, who was the third to last boss? Big fire guy.
Smolderon.
Smolderon, right? We went into Smolderon on heroic, and after like attempting it for 2 nights, our guild comes back the next week, and we're like, hey guys, heads up, we're gonna split our raid team in half. And half of us are gonna do this fight, and then and I think I had to do it both times because we only have 2 tanks, right? And so like I'm doing it both times. So we literally split our raid team in half, and then took half our team through it, killed him, and then took our other half of our team through it and killed him. Because doing it, I think we had like, I don't know, 26, 28, maybe 28 people, right? Was just not gonna happen. So cutting it down to like 13 people just made the fight way easier, like way easier because of scaling and how things placed on the ground. I think locking it in at 20, and it doesn't have to be 20. I just think they need a number to lock it in. But locking it in at a number, forces consistency with that difficulty, right? Because imagine Race to World First happens, and you're watching like Liquid and Echo race, and they're literally just like kicking people off the team to like cut it down for a specific boss. They're like, oh, you know, this boss is just better as a 10-man. This boss is better as a 20-man. So you have to lock in at something. And I do think part of the charm of raiding in WoW is a large group, right? I do think part of the charm of raiding is like we have 20 people who are trying to organize together to do this. I mean, originally it was 40, but now it's like 20 people organized trying to do this thing together. That's really cool, and that heavily separates it from heavily separates it from dungeons, which are 5-man. And so I do wonder if they forced it, said, hey, no, 10 is the new mythic number, because they have to lock it at something for difficulty consistency, because mythic is so difficult that like it's just you have to lock in it. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, every boss on heroic has some breakdown point where the boss gets significantly easier the less people you have, or some bosses get significantly easier the more people you have. It's just very depending on the boss. And if it was flex on mythic, people would just constantly adapt their group to whatever is the easiest.
Oh yeah, and because of people would get bitter too, right?
Yeah.
Think about how bitter people get, and that's problem too. Like especially on mythic, where every 0.5% of damage matters, right? You look over and like Timmy is doing like much less damage than you, right? And you're like, dude, why don't we just kick Timmy? If we kick Timmy, we can kill this boss. Don't even have to replace Timmy. Just get rid of him, right? I think that starts to create like a little bit more of a toxic environment. So I do wonder. I think 20 feels good as the number because it still creates a large group. However, we're curious. I mean, at the end of the day, though, that's why you see Mythic raid teams just recruiting nonstop, right? I think Chick and I were looking at like a Mythic Guild's webpage like this morning or something.
Oh, yeah.
But they're just constantly recruiting, constantly trying to find things. As X said, right? Like they're even over on Discord servers, like trying to find the next recruit, trying to figure out who they're picking for their team, and that matters.
Well,
but
the moment you don't get new blood is the moment you stop progressing. Because like it's cool and all to have the same people you've banged out for years, but sometimes someone just kind of feels like they've plateaued and how far they can get. And whether that be intentional or because that's just how as good as they can get, sometimes you just gotta get other people that will just get better. It's sad, but sometimes that is how it goes.
Yeah, and people's schedules change. You just don't know. You don't know what to expect. I was talking to my friend Capo, and he was raiding this season, and they just ended up having they just gave up after a while because like dude, we weren't able to keep people. They were just. Especially once they start hitting the harder bosses, right, getting the brood and whatnot, they're just like, no, nobody's staying around. We're losing tanks. We're losing DPS. We don't want to keep recruiting this many people all the time. But anyways, move on to the next question. We have a question coming in from Carb, a new member in our Discord server. Carb, welcome into the Discord. He says, hey, gang, recently started listening and enjoying the podcast. Have a few different takes than me, but that's all good. You know what, Carb? Totally fine. I actually, listen, Chicken, myself, X even here today, we're going to say things people don't agree with. If you don't agree with us on that, totally fine. Not going to think any less of you. That's just the fun of being able to sit on a podcast and record is we just get to pontificate ideas. But your question is this. You said question or topic for you. We have the guild crafting, which is cross-server. We have the whole housing thing coming up. So how would you guys feel about something like a Warband crafting table for your own account? I'm someone who plays a few different characters on different servers, but not in the same guild. So it feels bad to need a weapon crafted on one and not be able to have it crafted from one of my alts. I think the answer for this is pretty simple. I almost responded to you in Discord, but I don't know. It's fun. It's fun having the questions on the podcast. Chicken, I don't do a lot of crafting, so I could be wrong on this. But personal orders, if you put a personal order in, that doesn't have to be server limited, correct?
I don't think so. No.
I think they are. I think they are server limited.
Are they server limited?
Really?
I'm pretty sure they are. The only thing that breaks server limits is guild.
Okay. Okay. Because for some reason I thought you could just put the person's name in and then dash server name.
No, I don't think that works.
Oh, interesting.
I think you're right. I think that's just for mail. Yeah, I think crafting orders is server limited.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I thought
right.
I put this in. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can give him a pretty easy fix for the problem, but that's a bummer. Yeah,
I mean, try it and see if it works.
Yeah,
I
definitely
don't think it does.
Yeah, I wouldn't. To what he said though, having a crafting table in your player housing that only allowed you to craft for your warband, I would not be opposed to that. That'd be fine. I'd be okay with that. I think I would have a problem if it was like just a crafting table in general for doing crafting orders. I don't think your player housing should have anything that I don't think player housing should be a convenience thing like how garrisons were. I think player housing should just be a like personalized thing, just to make it like feel like your space, be a place to hang out, but not necessarily a place to get stuff done or to make something easier for you. Because then that just pulls you away from the cities and whatnot. But I don't dislike that though. Be able to do things personalized just for your warband. That actually doesn't. I don't think that would be a problem.
I think the only reason why it wouldn't happen is just that it's resources that Blizzard would have to dedicate to creating that system. When they're likely assuming that someone is just in the same guild, because it's very rare that you see someone in like 3 different guilds across their characters.
Yeah. I will say that's probably a very specific problem to have. I'm sure that there are people out there who have it, but it does seem like a very specific problem to have. I would say almost all my characters are on the same server, especially now that most things are cross server. All my characters are on the same server. I also though don't do a lot of crafting. I don't do any crafting. So I just but also as somebody who doesn't do any crafting, it's so quick to get stuff done that I don't even think about it. I'm just like, I'll like ask my guild first, anybody on that can do this, and 9 times out of 10 somebody will come do it from the guild.
That's fair.
And like the 1 time out of 10 that they don't, I just post it and trade, and then somebody does it like insta.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I'm not totally opposed to that idea. Like things in your house that could be warband beneficial, I think could be fun. But anyways, we are well over time for the podcast today. A lot of great conversations. Chicken, as always, dude, I love being able to record this podcast with you. And X, thank you, dude, for popping in today, hanging out with us. If I'm honest, it was actually kind of a little bit of a last minute ask, and so I'm really thankful that you were able to get in here and record with us today. X, if people want to find out more, like watch your content, ask you questions about WoW, where can they find you?
So I stream every Tuesday, Thursday at 8 p.m. EST at twitch.tv/XortiqDN. And I'm also on Twitter with the same handle, and I just post dumb stuff, and
Perfect.
sometimes about WoW, sometimes just some VTuber stuff, because that's what I am.
We will put those links in the description as well for anybody who's listening. If they want to find that more easily, we will put the links there. I myself also stream on Twitch, and so if you're wanting to come hang out, you can find my content on Twitch under _Swaglock or Swaglock on YouTube. I post beginner guide content and just WoW videos in general. But everybody, again, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If you want to ask your own questions for us to answer on the podcast, you can join our Discord. There's a link in the description, and go to the Questions for the Pod channel, where you can add your questions for us to talk about on the podcast. We love talking about your questions. We can never get enough questions. We would do question-only podcasts if we had too many questions. Like, we just love doing it. Chick and I would record a second podcast just to answer questions if we had too many questions. Dude, Chicken, if I came to you and was like, dude, we have 30 questions this week. Can we do a second podcast episode this week? You'd be like, yeah, dude, we got that. Easy.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I probably would say that. Never mind.
But anyways, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And we'll have another video out next week. Actually, before we wrap up, I just want to say, most podcasts, Chicken, can you look up the number for me real quick? Most podcasts actually die long before their 20th episode. I think it's like 0.1% of podcasts make it past episode, or make it to episode 20. And today is our 20th episode. So this feels like a pretty legit benchmark for us. We're excited. And so, yeah, it's kind of a bit of an exciting thing. So everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you so much for these just listen to our podcast and these past 20 episodes. It's been amazing. We're just so thankful that all of you have been supporting us and encouraging us. And Chicken, were you able to find that number?
Yeah, 1%. Yeah, 1%.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Anyways, everybody, we will see you around soon.